ahead and there we go. So we will be posting the recording to our YouTube channel. But everyone, welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time to our NIST Friday afternoon learning community, formerly known as the NIST Happy Hour. And today we are kicking off our spring session with Dr. Lucy Luong. And Lucy is at San Francisco State, where she is the program coordinator at SEPL, the Science Education Partnership and Assessment Laboratory in the Department of Biology. And in SEPL, Lucy is developing and managing grant-funded programs that center both undergraduate and high school student voices in writing new scientist spotlights. And as part of the Scientist Spotlights team, she also leads the peer review process of Scientist Spotlight submissions from across the world, and she also manages the open access website. And so without any further ado, over to Lucy.
Thanks for the introduction, Brenda. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm excited to be here and given the opportunity to share with this community more about Scientist Spotlights. And I also want to acknowledge the team, the Scientist Spotlights team, who I'm sharing on behalf of. I'm really grateful and acknowledge the support I've gotten from Professors Jeff Shinsky and Kimberly Tanner throughout my time working with them on the Scientist Spotlights initiative. I just wanted to see if we could do a raise of hands or the hand reaction raise. How many of you have used spotlights in your courses or programs or contexts before? All right, so I see maybe a couple. Cool, we have some experienced instructors in here. And for those of you that have not, that's totally okay. I'm excited that you're here to learn with us. And we're gonna get started. So I will share a bit about the agenda for today. For the first half of the Zoom session, we're going to learn and take away what a Scientist Spotlights is in our context of the Scientist Spotlights initiative, and share where you can find them and maybe ideas of how to get started. And in our second half, we'll talk a little bit about the research behind Scientist Spotlights, because they are evidence-based teaching strategies and assignments. And we will brainstorm together some ideas around how we can start to use them in our context. So more on that towards the second half of our session. I want to start off with a little icebreaker, sorry. We're going to do a chat waterfall. So for those of you who aren't familiar with a chat waterfall, it's where you're going to take a moment to think and actually type in the chat your response to a question that will pop up soon. And what we want to do is not click send yet, because after maybe a minute of quiet time to write, we're all going to click send at the same time, and I'm going to do a countdown. All right, so the question is, we're going to start off learning about each other. Think back to when you were in college. Maybe that's a long time ago. Maybe that's pretty recent. Which scientist do you remember learning about in your college science classes? So go ahead, I'll give a minute to type in the chat, but don't click send yet. Maybe another 5 seconds to wrap up thoughts. And on the count of 3, we're all gonna click send. So 1, 2, 3, hit send. And we're just going to see waterfall chat. Take a moment to read what your colleagues wrote about.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
All
Sorry.
righty. So I am scrolling through and I'm seeing a lot of names. Not many, but all were dead white men. There's question marks on some of the names that you maybe learned about. I'm seeing lots of Watson and Crick, Mendel, Einstein, a couple of not many, can't remember. Totally okay, I'm on that same boat. But yeah, that's a really, everyone has different experiences in their college classes, but I'm getting the sense that a lot of people are seeing similar of the same people who happen to be, one person mentioned, deceased men who happen to be white. A couple women in there too, and then names I don't know. So um, I encourage you all to do this exercise because it gets us to think about how we, as most of us who are instructors, what we actually do in our courses. And we're going to turn the mirror back on ourselves and just take a moment to think about the messaging in our courses. The question that I want you to think about is what, if any, specific examples of scientists do your students typically encounter? What messages might those examples convey to your students? So this, your response to what you're thinking about now, it may be completely different. Maybe you don't share those scientists that you see all over the chat that we just the chat waterfall that we just did, but for some folks, it might not be very different at all, and we're still doing the same things maybe our instructors did in college. And I can share for myself that I never considered this either. I didn't think it mattered to share examples of scientists myself until I got to learn more about some of the research behind the lack of diverse representation in science and how it could prevent students from persisting. So scientist spotlights were invented in part because of what was happening in an instructor's course, and he wanted to make a change. So for our scientist spotlights that we're talking about, these assignments are there to explicitly address diversity and inclusion in your courses, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what they are and how to use them. So before going in too much about what a scientist spotlights is, it's coming up, I promise. We want to share a little bit about why they're important, why it came to be, why it should matter. So first off, scientist spotlights, these assignments that we're going to talk about, they challenge long-standing scientist stereotypes. So you can combat stereotype threat in your courses. They expand students' possible selves to include science, allowing students to see themselves belonging in science. And they also support academic success and leadership development in college science courses. So some of the programs in scientist spotlights, they also are around students developing the assignments, not just experiencing them. So I just wanted to highlight some of the major studies that kind of brought together the importance of how scientist spotlights came to be. And now, as promised, let's go over what is a scientist spotlight. So scientist spotlights, I said they're assignments. They're assignments that cover course content. So you can put them in place of a homework textbook reading, for example. So it's nothing new to add. It could be an alternative or a replacement. What's different about these is they introduce biographical information for counter stereotypical scientists that often students really don't see in traditional textbooks. And if you are an instructor wanting to implement these in your class, they're typically performed out of class and graded only for timeliness and word count. So it really does allow you to cover content, not feel like you're adding on something extra, and it doesn't take time away from your in-class sessions. The major thing to know about scientist spotlights, the importance about what makes it different from other assignments that might seem similar is scientist spotlights assignments are written reflections that specifically ask students to reflect on how they think about scientists. So I want to share that maybe you've done something similar where you show a picture of a scientist on a slide, but then you move right on. That's a great start, but when we're talking about to show diversity in your courses, but when we're talking about scientist spotlights in the Scientist Spotlights Initiative context and the research that we're going to share, we're talking more about scientist spotlights in terms of those assignments that really promote student reflection and metacognition. So now we're going to jump into what it looks like and how it does all of this. We're going to go through the anatomy, and I have an example here of a scientist spotlight on a chemist, because I am a chemist by training. And you might see this picture before you. It's a Word document. Those are typically how our assignments are handed out. You do not have to read all this. It's just there to give you a big picture. So we're just going to break this chunk by chunk. Scientist spotlights always have a brief biography of the scientist and a picture, and that photo of a stereotypical scientist, I can share that it's quite powerful for students to see, especially if it's someone who they can relate to. Here's the link to biographical sources. So the biography of the counter-stereotypical scientist, all these links that we link to, we do not create these. They are already available open access on the web, and they could be anything from YouTube videos, podcasts, or short stories or articles about the scientists. So now there's links to science content. So not only do they get to learn about the scientists, they learn about the research that they do. So it could be articles that the scientist is in, or just a topic that relates to what the scientist does. So it can cover broad content, broad topics, content in your course. So it doesn't have to link to that research article. The major part of a scientist spotlight, that written assignment and reflection, what sets us apart. We ask students to think about what they read and pretty much reflect on the assignment. And it can be anything from what's interesting, what did they learn about content-wise, what did they learn about the scientist. But one question that's bolded here, and I'm going to highlight it and make it and kind of like make it big so you can all see, it's the same on every scientist spotlight. But ask students, what do these resources tell you about the types of people that do science? And it starts to get them to think about their possible selves in science as well. So that reflection piece is super important. I do want to share that in some, not all, scientist spotlights, there's about the author, because 80% of them that are available out there are written by students. And there has been research done on student authors as well. And it's just a really nice kind of like bridge from the student to the scientist that students get to read about. No research has been done there on that as a spotlight. So now that we have a chance to get to know what a scientist spotlight looks like, we can dive into exploring where you can find them. So exploring the Scientist Spotlights Initiative website. I do work on the behind the scene maintenance of all the scientist spotlights that come and get posted on our website. So that is freely available for you to start using, so you don't have to get started with scientist spotlights from scratch. There are things out there already that you're welcome to use and adapt. So we have over 900 assignments and growing. We have a bunch that we still need to process this month. There are a lot authored by students, roughly 80%, and they cover subjects from very broad STEM subjects to very particular like discipline-based subjects and topics. But we also have some social sciences in there too. And we've gained a lot of users on this database, almost around 72K from all over the continents. All right. And then I see a hand up. Talita?
Yeah, just briefly. With so many, what is the word for it? Grassroots, I guess. Students picking a scientist and writing something. Are there duplicates in there? Do multiple people offer the same scientist, and do you keep them? Or do you merge them?
So with our submission process, totally different from implementation. You or students are able to submit it to our website. We have a review process that checks for duplicates. So in the past, there have been some duplicates, and we've kept like maybe 2 duplicates at most on there, but Any of them that are duplicates, again, we will send an email back saying that we appreciate their effort, but we would love to highlight someone. There's a lot of scientists out there. We would love to highlight someone else on there, and we encourage them to go explore and submit again. So we do keep tabs on that. Thank you for asking. Yeah, so then now, Brenda, I'm going to go through instructions, but Brenda's going to help me out with putting us into breakout rooms. So we're going to do our first activity. I'm going to share instructions first, and then Brenda afterwards will post a link in the chat with the same slide of instructions, so you won't forget it. So part one, we're going to do go-arounds. Humans are important. People, the scientists, you all are important. So please introduce yourself in your small breakout room and share, because it's important, if you've used scientist spotlights before. If you have, how, just very quickly. If you haven't, why not? No judgment, no pressure. You're here to learn. So if this is totally new to you, way to go. You're here and learning now. I put an order on there in case it helps. You want to start an alphabetical order by first name. And then part two, where you get to spend more time, you could do a go around again. We're going to explore the database, but it might be useful if you've used the search before. You can share some advice you have for your colleagues who are new to the Scientist Spotlight's website. So it doesn't have to be this whole breakout session time for just going and searching and being quiet and doing things on your own. Engage with those colleagues. They have knowledge out there on how to implement spotlights too and how to use the website. So if you're in a room with some experienced users, that's great. If you're not and there's time to explore, check out the search feature and try to see what keywords or what tabs you can use to look up scientists that might be relevant for you. There's going to be a guide that pops up in here that can help you along with your search. But if you don't get there, not a problem at all. We're here to learn from each other and learn with each other. And when we come back, I might ask for volunteers from groups to share some ideas about implementation if there's something great that you just really want to shout out there to our colleagues, and then also offer space for questions and skepticisms. If you are new to Scientist Spotlights, you will need to create an account, and it's free to access all these assignments. And then Brenda, are the breakout rooms ready?
Yep, everybody's going to go to a breakout room for about 10 minutes.
Awesome.
And the links are in the chat. Here you go.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, the rooms are open. Um, hmm. I don't, okay. Oh, good. So we can join a breakout room if we want also. Oh, I will assign Pinar to room 6. Okay. So Talita, do you want to be in a room too? I can't hear you.
Rookie.
There.
I'll go join 7 or 3. Do you want to join one so that we don't do the same?
Yeah, I can join. Oh wait, 7 has Siley, 6 has Carlos. I feel 5 has Melanie. I can go to 3, or you can go. Why don't you go to 3?
Okay.
And I'll go to 4. How do we actually, how do we send ourselves to a room?
You can, if you open the
Join. I'll
breakout
just
room
join,
thing,
right? Just
yeah,
click the blue. Okay. And then I'm keeping an eye on the time. I'm going to bring everybody back, I think, at 1:30, or maybe a little, yeah,
or a little before.
a
Yeah,
little
because I've
before.
already been
Yeah,
there.
so that people can share. Okay, cool.
All
So I'm
right.
going to room 4. Bye-bye.
Okay. Oh, it's not letting me join. What? Oh, It's not letting me join. I don't know what's up for that. Oh well.
So everyone should be back here in about 25 seconds. Hopefully everyone had a good discussion, good exploration of the website, and I'll let you have everyone share and ask questions of Lucy when we're all back. Okay.
Welcome,
Oh,
everyone.
okay.
Are you able to see my screen still?
Yep.
It's back. If it's okay, I want to open the floor to any questions or skepticisms you might have about spotlights, or even share ideas about implementation. So I hopped in a few rooms and some people have used spotlights before. And I see a hand for Mina. Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, so this is really an interesting and very wonderful thing I have learned today. I would really try this out with my students here. And like in the breakout room also we were discussing how have you sort of curated these scientists and created that database. And my other question was, of course, it was answered by Brinda, that if the students are writing the questions, who are they answering? So I got to know that it's instructor. I wanted to know whether the questions are, sent back to the scientists themselves.
So I guess I'll start with that question. Are the written responses ever sent to the scientists? I'm gonna say no, unless the instructor themselves wants to share that with the scientists. It's all up to you, but you're the ones collecting the homework if you think it's worthwhile to share. I don't see why not. Some of them do have their emails out there on the web, but for some who don't, you're welcome to contact Scientist Spotlights and we can see if we can find their contact info too.
And how have you, curated that database?
Mhm. So it started, I think, in 2020, and we gathered a bunch of scientist spotlights written by students actually from a service learning course at San Francisco State University. So they were already working alongside with instructor partners, thinking about what topics in the classes that each instructor teaches. And these are like various biology courses, what topics they want to cover. And they were looking for scientists who kind of work with, did research, does research on a topic similar to that. So the students themselves were going out and searching for scientists and looking for stories about them. And they often chose, not always, often we see them choosing scientists that really resonate with them. That's read in their author bio. And I think we've opened it, we've then since opened it up so anyone can submit a scientist spotlight on our website. There is a link somewhere on the website, and I can share that with you later, where you can curate your own and have students curate their own or colleagues curate their own, and it goes straight to us where we would peer review them and
Okay.
let you all know if anything's missing before we get to post them.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
I think a hand from Michelle.
Hey, thank you. So I want to say I'm impressed by how large the collection has grown since the last time I was in. And I did have one question out of curiosity. I noticed as I was exploring, there's a fair number who are sort of postdocs or assistant professors. So how often do you go back and review if any of these need updating, like the profiles of the scientists?
We do a quality control with the team that does the peer reviewing every year or so, but it's a lot to go through manually. Sometimes we just keep them as is, and it's kind of like it's like capturing the scientists at a moment in time when the student wrote about them and when they were a postdoc. So we don't update that quite often unless the scientists themselves reach out to us to share that they'd want that update.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then, are there any more hands? Maybe one more. If not, we could move forward. All right. I think that means we can move forward. Thank you all for asking very wonderful questions. And if any more pop up, I'm happy to talk outside of this session as well.
I just wanted to point really quick in the chat that Pankaj has shared another similar activity called Revealing Hidden Figures. And so I put that in the chat for folks to look at. Thank you for sharing that, Pankaj.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So on to the next part of our agenda. I did say that scientist spotlights are evidence-based. There has been research done by our team and people outside of our team. So we're just going to highlight a few today to show you that it does have an impact on students. We're not going into this blindly. So just a quick overview, we're going to share 2 investigations with similar research questions and methods for both of them. We're going to look at the big question about how students change their conceptions of scientists from the beginning to the end of a course after receiving at least 3 scientist spotlights. And we're going to look at a study in the college level with all different levels of biology, lower and upper division. And I know that this is a community for college educators mainly, but I am going to highlight, and we're going to breeze right through this, a study with secondary school students. And there's something important in there that kind of addresses our next activity. So I hope you all enjoy learning more. Our college level investigation was done in 2021. This is the publication. I just want to highlight 18 undergraduate student researchers who were co-authors in the paper, students at SF State. And it's important to know that they are also students who wrote scientist spotlights that were used in the courses for the study. So very quickly, our broad research question is, how do undergraduate students change their conceptions of scientists from the beginning to the end of a biology course after receiving at least 3 scientist spotlights? And while we can look at a lot of measures for science identity, we don't have a lot of time for that, so I'm just going to cover one. And this is our relatability prompt that asks students to share their opinion on the statement. I know of 1 or more important scientists to whom I can personally relate. And students can pick strongly agree, somewhat disagree, strongly disagree. And we categorize strongly and somewhat agree as just agree, somewhat disagree, strongly disagree as just disagree. So it's a closed-ended question, but it also comes with an explain why. So it's both closed-ended and open-ended. So we're going to share the quantitative results of this. And we're looking at if there's going to be an extent to a pre to post shift in how students relate to scientists. So are they going to shift a lot from agree in how much they agree with that statement? So here's the statement again on relatability. I'm sharing just one graph right now with data on those 18 student authors that I highlighted. We actually asked them the same question, and they're the ones writing these spotlights, not actually experiencing them in class. And we've asked them to do this survey as well, to do this assessment. So not many really agreed at the beginning that they could relate to scientists. But actually, a profound, significant shift happened towards their post-assessment. So all students who authored spotlights significantly increased their relatability to scientists. So we see something new here. This wasn't the original purpose of the investigation, but I think it is important to show. But now we're going to come to our actual study with students who experienced those at least 3 spotlights in their courses. This is how much students already agree that they relate to scientist spotlights, a little under 50%. And I'm actually going to ask you all to take 10 seconds, make a prediction. What proportion of students agree in the post-assessment? All right. And if you're ready for this, here's the proportion that agrees after at least 3 scientist spotlights. And there is a significant overall pre to post shift in students' relatability to scientists, about 36%. We disaggregated the data the research team did to look at women versus men, URM, underrepresented minorities versus non-URM, Pell eligible and not Pell eligible. And I think that one's social economic status related. So my question to you, and I invite you to make another prediction, do you think different student identities correspond to larger shifts? Oh, and I see some people in the chat sharing too. Awesome. Are you all ready? So now I'm going to share. And actually, scientist spotlights significantly increase relatability to students across all student identities. You can see significant shifts regardless of if they're men or women, URM, non-URM, Pell eligible, not Pell eligible. So it's a really very wholesome and like very equitable assignment that happened to impact the students. And that's really exciting. I think it's really exciting. So I will share that student voices are more powerful than that. I believe student voices are very powerful, and it can share more than just that graph that I showed you. So we're going to hear a little bit, a sample of the qualitative responses to those shifts. So one student said, after taking this course, I learned a lot about different scientists, which I can relate. It was nice to read about scientists who are minorities and also women because I'd never read about them. I learned that she and I have some things in common, things that reflect our journey through school. Both our parents' divorces and family situations force us to struggle with finances. And lastly, the scientist spotlights have definitely inspired me and showed me a variety of ways of being able to give back to the community with my cultural upbringing. So we really do see, and I hope you do too, the effects that this has on students who experience these assignments, and as little as 3 assignments. So if you replace 3 textbook readings with scientist spotlights, it could have that sort of impact. All right. So moving on to a more recent publication. This is the high school secondary school study. I do want to highlight the 18 awesome teacher researcher co-authors that were a part of this. This is the first major study in a secondary school investigation on scientist spotlights. So just a shout out to them. And we actually learned quite a lot from the study that's going to inform us on what we want to do next. So I hope you're looking forward to this. I'm going to zoom through these slides. Same exact question, only difference is secondary students. Same exact prompt, and a lot of science identity measures were looked at, but we're going to look at the same exact prompt, relatability. Thinking about results in a similar way, we're going to show the graph pretty soon, and maybe some of you have already predicted we're not going to show this to you if there's no impact. There is an impact on relatability with secondary school students as well. So there's a significant overall pre to post shift in their relatability to scientists, but just 27%, which is quite a bit lower than what the college level was at 36. So here's a question for you to ponder about. Why might so many secondary school students still disagree that they do not relate to scientists? Excuse me. So we actually looked at multiple things, including demographics, and there was no change on whether demographics affected if students agree or disagree. That affected the pre to post shift in students agreeing. What actually happened was some teachers reported having discussions in classes, and that actually affected how students were shifting their ideas on scientist relatability. So teachers that reported no discussion, you see that there's not a significant change. Discussions before, there's quite a significant change. After, an even more significant change, and discussions before and after showing some quite significant changes. So in-class discussions are showing significantly more students shifted their relatability to scientists after, again, 3 scientist spotlights. And that's really informing us on what we want to do next. So quick key findings, pre to post relatability. Students really expand their possible selves in science across all demographics, college or pre-college. There's something cool about authorship going on that we haven't looked into and we plan to look into. So undergraduate students who author scientist spotlights more profoundly shifted their ideas about scientists. We're looking into having high schools author as well, and even students from different institutions and disciplines author and doing studies with them. And this one's going to inform our next activity, which we may not have as much time for. More secondary school students shifted their relatability when instructors held in-class discussion. But what exactly was happening, we don't really know what's going on, why so many more students are thinking they relate to scientists more. Like, what could teachers possibly do in class that helps it out? As part of the CEPL lab, we have looked at language as a role in this, and we're hoping to look at something called instructor talk, non-content language that instructors use, and how that influences scientist spotlights. So we may not have a lot of time for this next activity, actually, but we're just going to consider the influence of how language might play a role. I'll invite you to do a quiet think activity on your own first. And there's no evidence of what's right or wrong to say with scientist spotlights. So we're going to invite you to take a moment and actually write out or type out if you're on your computer, and that's more your speed. How would you introduce scientist spotlights in your courses? So we want you to have something tangible to bring into the next breakout session. So please wrap up your thoughts. Again, no right or wrong, just getting your ideas out. And we might have if possible, a short breakout session where we'll share introductions again. And this is where that tangible piece that you just wrote, it doesn't have to be a full-on script. Just share your name and a little bit about how you would introduce scientist spotlights. Please be kind to one another because we don't know what's right or wrong. So come with a very open mind to this. And then the next part, I'm going to share some quotes, and you're welcome to have these too. We may have time just to discuss 2 in your session, but read 1 or 2 quotes out loud and discuss with your colleagues about them. And here are some guiding questions that might help. What's similar to this quote with your own introduction? What's missing? What are some benefits of saying this? What are some drawbacks? We're just trying to get us all to think a lot about the language around this right now. We have no evidence of what's right or wrong. Just cannot reiterate that enough. We'll come back, we'll open it up to some questions or observations. So Brenda, if you can
Yep.
open up.
I'm gonna open the rooms, but I'm also just putting the link in the chat to
Oh,
the Google
perfect.
Doc.
Yeah,
So
so
I-
this link will have the sample quotes, and these are real quotes actually by instructors.
all right. So let's go ahead and join our room.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I really wish the activity was longer, but in the spirit of time, we're going to move forward. The quotes are here on the slide. If we want to take one or two hands, if you want to share any questions you might have or something you notice with the group, happy to take in some hands right now. All right, I do not see anyone. And I will say I jumped into a couple rooms to hear about things, and I heard things about, wow, the first one seems like it might be too dry and we'd like to add more. And then the other ones, if you kept reading, it added on top of that. And knowing what we know about scientist spotlights, since the beginning of this meeting, I heard a lot of things about talking about how about communities that students are in, how it could be related to them, how they could see themselves in science. So there's a lot of wonderful language I have been hearing in my Zoom room drop-ins here and there. So it's great that you're all considering the language around introducing scientist spotlights. It's a topic that we really want to look at. And I purposely did not share what instructor talk was earlier, but in our lab, we want to look specifically for instructor talk type language. And I'll give a definition here. It includes language used by an instructor that's not directly related to the concepts under study, but instead focuses on creating the learning environment. It's a whole topic on its own that I can't cover in the session, obviously, but there's a lot of research being done if you're interested in looking at the frameworks and different categories that fall under instructor talk and how you could play around with what you say to kind of like hit different categories that could be positive instructor talk in your teaching or maybe negative instructor talk. So some of the sources are there. I haven't heard this question yet when I jumped around, but no one seemed to question if students really cared about what you say or if they'll remember anything about you say about spotlights. But I do want to give a shout out to a paper by our wonderful alumni from Steeple, Dax Ovid and Bree Tripp. In their study, they actually have evidence that students do recall what their instructors say during scientist spotlights. And this was unprompted in an interview process. I'll share all the quotes, but I'll read one. Students do remember, and you can see it here. The first one says, the professor presented this in a way like, this is an opportunity to really open your mind up and just go into these assignments with an open mind, an open heart, and just learn what these scientists do. The student remembered this. They were not prompted about this, and it's just like amazing for me to read about this and hope if you have a chance to check out their publication too. So just a little tidbit on that. And we're gonna close up. It would be wonderful if I can hear your thoughts anonymously, get some final reflections on the session. I really want to see and know what you learned after just a short 1 hour session and one thing that you're inspired to do since coming to the session. And I think Brenda dropped in the chat the link. Oops. Thank you, Brenda. And I know we're down for time, so I just want to share You're still able to submit after this session, but thank you for spending your time with us Scientist Spotlights today and Miss Falcon. And if you have any questions, my contact information is there. Thank you really for spending your Friday after a long week with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And if Lucy, if you don't mind sticking around for maybe 5 minutes or so, if folks are still if folks still have questions for you or anything that they want to ask about, we'll stick around for another couple minutes. And thank you all for filling out the survey that I put in the chat there for Lucy. And thank you for being here, Lucy, and introducing, I think, a lot of people who have never used spotlights. Maybe they've heard of them, but haven't actually used them. This is a great time to be thinking about how this can fit into your classroom this semester. So,
and it still covers content. You're not missing a thing. I did think I got some direct messages, but I don't know if the person's still there. Oh, it's Mina. Yes, go ahead. Where is that question? How can I best answer your question? Which data for what research? Oh, I think you're muted again. That's why.
there you go.
Excuse me. Hello.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I meant if I would like to analyze students' questions.
I am not sure about that. I feel like